We are lucky enough to have gotten John Skipper, the chairman and CEO of Meadowlark, to spend an hour with me. I'm David Samson from Nothing Personal with David Samson, and we've got quite a few topics to go over. It's been a minute since I've been able to corral both John and I at the same time, and I don't want to waste a minute. John, you doing all right?
Yes, doing very well here in New York City.
Are you ready? Because we have to start at the top of the show. It's been covered by Dan. It's been covered by me, but we've got an angle here that's a little different on the PGA LIV. I can only imagine your reaction. I was thinking when the news got announced in the most clumsy of ways, I was smiling at the possibility of a sport which you were eager to invest in all of a sudden being sullied by Saudi money. Were you so happy not to be at ESPN when this merger was announced?
Well, I was happy to be where I am even before they announced the merger, so I'm still happy to be here. I think you're asking whether I'm happy to avoid having to make a decision about whether I want to buy the rights for a nonprofit golf tour, which is now at least partly owned by the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund. That's what you're asking, right?
I'm really just interested in the fact that you have to do business with Saudi Arabia now. There's so much money involved, and PGA realized they had a problem. When you have an entity that, according to Jay Monahan, was bleeding money in litigation, was worried about losing more and more players over to LIV, and the old adage, if you can't beat them, join them. And that's what he did. He basically announced that we couldn't beat you, so we're deciding to join you. And the decision has not gone over well with either the players or the constituents, but we have not actually heard from any of the broadcast partners. And I can't figure that out. Why haven't we?
Because I don't think any of them want to risk alienating somebody before they understand what is actually going on. I don't think to date it's possible to actually understand what has really happened here. We've heard contradictory things, right? It was a merger, then it wasn't a merger. We're hearing that the chairman is from the Sovereign Wealth Fund, but the PGA controls the tour. I don't know what they've actually done. And I think we do need to acknowledge that you and I both have heard the news this morning that Jay Monahan is recuperating from some sort of physical issue. And I'm not inclined to speculate or it's not my business what it is, but we should be sensitive to while we talk about this, that we wish Jay Monahan well, though I don't know if I wish him well in this merger or not, because I do believe it's hard not to suggest that he has capitulated. I don't know if they really are at risk for dramatic legal fees, but he's capitulated. He has said, I'm going to decide that given the amount of money they have and given the amount of controversy I'm now involved in, I'm going to join forces. But of course, it has not worked to date. All it has done is create more chaos, more non-unity, more questions. And I also think it's very possible this will be run off the tracks at this point by governmental agencies or other people. And I think to your original question, the broadcast networks, they love golf. So they are not going to get in here and make some rash remark that is going to create problems with their relationship with the PGA Tour in whatever form it emerges from. It emerges here.
But the broadcasters were not so excited to do business with LIV, which had a bunch of great names. It was an interesting concept, team golf, 54 holes. Everyone makes the cut. The best they could do was buy hours on CW. So clearly the broadcasters have already aligned and decided that they wanted to side with PGA and not with LIV. But then all of a sudden you're going to have to deal with both. I just think there's a reckoning coming. And we can talk about Jay Monahan, but I'm not wishing him ill. I don't want him to be sick, but that should not stop us from talking about the absolute disaster that came in his announcement. I hope it didn't lead to him getting sick, obviously. It just leads to him, in my mind, being incompetent. And he's been covering up ever since. And the whole government issue, he actually met his employees, John. I don't know if you saw this. It was great. He did a meeting. I was picturing him pulling into the office and all the employees there wondering, in a merger, am I going to lose my job or is there going to be shrinkage? And him saying, hey, don't worry, this isn't a merger. First time that had been said that it wasn't a merger, because the government was saying, if this is merger, we get to take a look at this. And now Jay Monahan's saying it's not a merger. Did you ever meet your, I was thinking about, I had to do this with our employees when we were moving cities, and you had several thousand people on the phone, their lives impacted. Are they going to be Montreal or Miami or California or what? But this is a whole different thing. Did you ever do full wide meetings with your employees?
We did. We did it with some regularity to sort of talk about the state of the state and to answer questions and to try to communicate. I'm assuming he had that in mind when he met with his employees, which is to try to reassure them, give them some insight, be a communicator. On the other hand, if there is a lack of clarity on actually what is going on, it is very tough to be clear communicating. And what they seem to be doing seems to be the very definition of a merger, doesn't it? They are taking, I don't know what they're doing if they're not merging. Are they creating brand new tournaments? It's not going to include, I'm assuming they're merging. Why, do you have some information to suggest they're not merging other than they're saying they're not merging?
Well, that's a lagging indicator to me. But yes, Greg Norman is saying, he of no information because he wasn't even consulted, is saying that LIV lives on. The PGA is saying that, I don't know if LIV is living on, but the PGA Tour lives on stronger and healthier and better with all the majors and all the tournaments. Everything stays the same. But what they're telling the government and senators like Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut, was he a senator when you were in Connecticut doing business with ESPN? Do you remember?
Yes.
So did
Yes.
you have to deal with him?
I don't, the way that's put, I didn't have to deal with him. He actually did come by the office and visit more than once. He was interested because ESPN is a very large employer in his state. And as you know, it's a state that has a lot of problems creating new jobs for itself. So they paid a lot of attention, and he was a pleasure to deal with.
So we've had to deal with senators, and I do view it as a thing because you have to let everyone know when a senator's coming, and everyone's got to be on their best behavior, and there's certain things you can talk about, not talk about. We wanted to give them autographs, but we couldn't because of their value, et cetera, et cetera. But this guy, Richard Blumenthal, who I've not met, he is out front of this issue saying that he's very concerned that anything Saudi Arabia involved that has to do with running an American institution, that's something the government has to take a look at, which is why Jay Monahan has been saying, no, we're in charge. You remember what he said upon the announcement, however dim it was,
Right.
that PGA has the majority, so they've got all operational control. But the fact is, we don't know that at all.
We do not, and it's a very, I don't know of many situations where the people with the money aren't in charge.
It's
Now, in
one
this
of the
case, both
great
these entities
mysteries.
have money. Have money. An interesting question is whether, if this had started with a secret meeting where the Saudis decided to put a bunch of money in as a minority owner of the PGA Tour, they might never have had a problem, right? You were asking about broadcasters. Broadcasters will probably accept that, oh, Saudi money is in the PGA. They raise their purses. They creating more opportunities for players to make money. Fine. I don't have a problem as a broadcaster then. I'm not saying me. I would have a problem. But I don't think we're going to find that most of their current broadcasters have a particular problem with the Saudis as a minority owner in a tour. Of course, again, I'm puzzled by the idea of a minority ownership in a nonprofit.
Well, it's a nonprofit entity. It's not a foundation. I know you're hung up on this because you think the PGA is for profit, and you're wondering why you'd give them so much money as a sponsor or a broadcaster. But they're passing the money through. Don't you worry. Your money's getting into good hands, right into Tiger's hands. You could have just written a check right to Tiger Woods. But you got us to a place where we need to get, which is you've said that you good with Saudi Arabian money, sports washing, Qatari money, sovereign funds. There's a lot of talk right now about them being allowed to be limited partners, as you just mentioned, in sports teams. And that's coming. Make no mistake. So you're right that in a way, Saudi Arabia is a partner now in golf, and they're going to be a partner in basketball. Adam Silver announced that they will allow sovereign fund investment in basketball teams. And I smirked. I smirked because Adam Silver has a job to do that is not, he's not interested in whether the money's dirty or clean. He's got a job to keep franchise valuations going and to keep people able to pay billions and billions of dollars for franchises. There's only so many Matt Ishbias. And so he's going to allow sovereign fund money in the NBA. And when you're with him at lunch, you're saying, great job, Adam. I like it.
I would quarrel with one thing. I do think Adam, you suggest he didn't care if the money was dirty or not. I think he does. I think until we see some investments and see where they come from, that would be a bit reckless to suggest that we know he's going to take so-called dirty money. I don't think you and I have even agreed on what makes money dirty or not.
Are you differentiating
the money's
between?
Not dirty.
Well, wait. Is the Saudi Arabian money dirty that's going into PGA? You've been spending your whole time talking to me about how terrible they are.
Define that, maybe to help with this. Define what you mean by dirty money. They made that money by drilling for oil and selling it. That's not dirty. The concerns are not that the money's dirty. The concerns are that we are complicitous in the regime if we're willing to take their money. The money's not dirty.
You've been very public in your position about money from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from UAE, and the views that you have of their political positions. And now there's been an infiltration into North American sports through golf. And now it's going to be in one of the 4 major sports, which means it's going to be in all of the sports soon. You know it, right? Do you agree with that at least?
I would rather wait till someone has actually taken the money before I criticize their taking it. They're right. No, I'm serious. I mean, I will criticize the PGA Tour. They have capitulated and decided they are willing to be in business despite protestations, very overt protestations, that it was not appropriate. I believe that the head of the PGA Tour said that no one ever had to apologize for being on the PGA Tour. People are going to have to apologize for being on the PGA Tour pretty soon.
Do you think the NBA will have to apologize when there's a limited partner that's a sovereign fund?
If it's a sovereign fund of Switzerland, no.
I'm not talking about Switzerland, John. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE.
They haven't taken that money yet. When they do, I'll be happy to discuss it. If I were asked me, would I take it? I would say no, I would not take it.
So you're at lunch with Adam, and Adam says, John, we've been friends a long time. I've got a job to do here. You say what to that?
I say, we will still be friends no matter what you do. You are suggesting you're going to take investment. Are you telling me that you're going to let the Saudi Arabians put $2 billion into the league?
Yes, I am.
And if you are, I'm going to tell you as your friend, I don't think that's a great idea. I know you've got a job to do. I think the NBA valuations will continue to grow, whether you take money from the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia or not. That's what I would tell him.
Owners are asking me.
He doesn't have to. I'm not an official advisor. He doesn't have to come to me to ask about anything. But personally, but personally, do I think it is seemly for the leagues to take money from the Saudi Arabians? I do not.
I think you're going to have to come
I'm
to
not
grips.
a big fan of regimes that are homophobic, misogynist, anti-Semitic, and that chop up journalists. And when those people come to me and say, "Hey, how about I invest in your company?" my answer would be no.
I'm not either, but you're going to have to come to grips with this. And the reason is the owners go to Adam, as they do to Rob Manfred in baseball, and say, I want to do X. I want to buy a network, as Ted Leonsis did, or Jerry Reinsdorf did. I want to buy another team, as Ted wants to buy the Nationals, let's say, or Jerry Reinsdorf would want to buy the Chicago Bears, as an example. I want a liquidity event. The valuation of my team, I want to put in the billions. And in order to get anyone to come in as a limited partner, because no normal person would want to be a limited partner at a $2 billion valuation and put in $200 million for an autographed basketball. But this sovereign fund, they're more than happy to. How do I say no to that when the owners come to me and say this is what they want? Now, how do you respond to that?
First of all, I think some of the owners will similarly have reservations about this. I don't think everybody there is only there to take whatever money comes along that makes their valuations go up. And I do think there are some things more important than money. By the way, I'm not suggesting anything other than I don't think it's seemly. I don't think it appropriate. I think what the PGA Tour has done is not a good idea.
Do you think that doing business in China is seemly?
Generally, not particularly, no.
It's a fascinating subject, John, and I'm not putting you on the spot, nor are you putting me, but there is a limit. And the problem with sports right now is the numbers have gotten to a place that I don't think any of us imagined they would get to. And you've got to get money from somewhere. And that's really all we're talking about. PGA Tour went through, if they could have found a partner to invest in them in order to cover litigation costs, in order to protect them, in order to make players happy, they would have wanted to crush LIV, not combine with them.
I actually thought they were crushing LIV. The LIV couldn't get broadcast contracts. Nobody came to the tournaments. They're not generating any particular revenue. I don't understand why they didn't wait them out and win.
Because they're unlimited. It's like when any lawsuit, I'm sure you did this running a big company, when you have an individual sue you, you can just discover them to death. You can just lawyer it. You can just drag it out. And it's way better to sometimes have someone accrue fees. I used to do that often, where there'd be somebody suing.
Are we aware of how much money PGA Tour has spent defending itself so far?
They're claiming $50 to $100 million
spent already,
and also in terms of not just defending, but they also filed suit. So it's both. There were counter suits going on. It was a bit of a legal mess with an unclear finish, actually. But he's right. Jay Monahan's right. They dipped into their reserves for this. And his point is that the sovereign fund, there's no dipping into their reserves. They don't need to drill another hole to get different oil. They could have litigated this to the end of time. That's one of the problems.
The threat of litigation to force a merger with their renegade golf tour by the august PGA tour. That's what they did. They used litigation to force a merger.
So no one has drawn that, and I will not draw those 2 points. I will say they are related, but not.
It's just a rationalization, isn't it? The rationalization.
That wasn't the purpose, though, John. In my opinion, right? I think the purpose for PGA is that they realized that they had a problem with LIV because of the players. And the irony is Jay didn't even tell Tiger or Rory, but the players were the ones who had been complaining. And you say that they had crushed LIV. I don't think the players felt that way. The players who were on LIV, they were able to come back and win tournaments. What did Koepka win? He just won a tournament. Coke, I don't know if you remember which tournament he won, but he just came back to win a tournament that was big. And there was something that happened with another LIV player. And the point was they thought that if you took the Saudi Arabian money from LIV, that you were going to be excommunicated. But then they're winning the PGA championship and they're still heroes. And now, why wouldn't you have taken that money? So you can be Rory McIlroy and say that I'm principal alone, and then all of a sudden have to change your mind when they're your partner? It's not good.
I admire that Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods held their ground and said, we believe in the PGA Tour and we're not going to take this money. And I admired that. And by the way, I haven't noticed that they have agreed yet. They haven't actually been public, have they, with what they think about this?
Roy McIlroy answered questions actually and said that for the good of the game, they're going to be partners, and I hope they're going to be good partners. But he doesn't regret that he didn't go, because that's, of course, what the media was trying to get him to say. Tiger has not said a word that I've seen, but I don't know that I'd call it a smart business decision when either of them did, because the other guys took the money and now they get to be back part of the PGA. But in terms of taking money, players decide that all the time. Are they going to take money? Do they go for the money? And my position has always been, as cynical as I may be, that if you offer a player $1 more than they're offered anywhere else, they will go. There's an example that happened in soccer where Leo Messi said outright, I was offered way more money to go to Saudi Arabia, and he was taking the moral high ground, though he's paid $30 million a year by Saudi Arabia to be their ambassador. So I don't know what high ground he was taking, but that he wasn't going to choose Saudi Arabia. He was choosing Miami, and your friend Don Garber got quite the big news as he attempts to become one of the big four, that Messi is coming to Miami. When you saw that news, knowing that Meadowlark's footprint in Miami, actually with everything that's been going on in Miami with the Heat and the Panthers, it's a really good time to be associated with Miami. Were you just over the moon when that happened?
I was happy for all of our guys in Miami who got to enjoy the NHL and the NBA runs, which I believe ended at 5 games. So yeah, it was fun. It's fun in the studio when Miami's winning. It's fun when Messi's coming to Miami. By the way, I don't think Don Garber's trying to be part of the big 4. I think he's trying to create a big 5.
So he's not trying to replace hockey? I always thought that he was trying to get above hockey into the big 4. You can't replace, in Africa, the safaris, right? There's the big 5 animals you try to see. It's not like one animal can say, I want to make it the big 6. It's just the big 5.
Well, there you go. It's an interesting metaphor. I was going to use accounting firms. It used to be the big 5 accounting firms, and they all merged, by the way, and non-mergers. And maybe they're nonprofit companies too. But
one of the great ways to know fun. A merger, John, that I love is when they combine the names. That's always a good way to know that 2 firms have merged. And then one of the names disappears over time. So there was Price Waterhouse Coopers, right? And there was Viacom CBS or Warner Brothers Discovery. They'll all come together, but eventually it just becomes Max, and then people forget. But Messi comes to Miami, and the part of the deal that interested me is that Garber had to do the deal. It wasn't Inter Miami doing the deal. It was Messi and MLS cutting the deal, because Messi's getting a piece of league pie. And I was mortified. I was completely against this. It's one thing what they did with Beckham, where he has an option to get an expansion team, which Beckham got and turned it into Inter Miami, actually, coincidentally. But what they're doing with Messi is what Nike did with Jordan, as seen in the new movie Air, where they're giving Messi a piece of the Adidas pie and a piece of the Apple subscription pie. How does Apple agree to that?
Well, I just assume they believe that his presence will generate more income, and consequently, they're happy to give him a piece of that. It's just commission, right? He's a commission on subs, a commission on ticket sales. I'm not sure what's commission on. I don't actually know
it's the subs. So Apple, with their streaming rights deal, what they're saying is that any people who join Apple subs for MLS, not Apple TV, who do the MLS package, he'll get a piece of it. And so it's but for Messi being in MLS, these people were not becoming subscribers. They weren't buying the package. Right. Now they are. Is that not a dangerous precedent? When you're running a business, I'm not willing. I love paying commission to salespeople, but that's really almost an equity piece in my mind that MLS should not have allowed, because what stops the next player? What about Mbappe? They're saying that he's going to leave PSG as a free agent. Wouldn't he deserve a bigger piece than even Messi?
I don't think Nike regrets giving Jordan a piece of Air Jordan, and I'm not sure Apple will regret giving Messi a piece of incremental money. The more interesting question to me is whether bringing Messi in is the best use of that money, right? Ultimately, to me, what MLS has to do is improve the quality of play in the league. They've got to upgrade. They're ultimately the only major sport in the United States that has to contend with the fact that there are other leagues in the world that are better than they are. There is nobody who plays American tackle football better than the NFL. There's nobody who plays basketball better than the NBA. There's nobody that plays hockey better than the NHL or baseball better than the MLB. The MLS, which has made astonishing progress, however, has several leagues around the world who have better players and better teams than they do. So the question is bringing Messi in going to decrease that delta, or would it bringing 25 players in who are 24, 25, 26 years old and have their career in front of them, would that have been a better expenditure of money?
So you make this decision all the time, and we made it as teams. Do you sign a free agent or do you develop your own players? It's way better to develop your own players, but you need a whole lot more patience. It's a very, it feels good. It's like a drug when you do a free agent because you feel the immediate impact, but then it goes away quickly. And I view Messi to MLS as becoming a drug addict because it's going to feel really good right now. And Inter Miami has all these new followers on Instagram, and there's all this excitement. The ticket prices have skyrocketed. Every ticket sold out. You can't watch Messi play in the U.S. Because every Inter Miami game, both home and away, is completely sold out. So you're going to have to go on the secondary market and pay Taylor Swift-like prices. But at the end of the day, that is not a sustainable model to me. So I was completely against the Messi deal.
Yeah, it's interesting. My first reaction was negative, and I've come to believe that it is probably a positive financial deal. There's one flaw, my friend, to your buying a free agent feels great. In global football, you have a unique thing happens. You don't have to wait and develop your own players. It's a world market, and they are all available. They're all available. You could go tomorrow and buy if with enough money, you could go tomorrow and take 25 players out of the Premier League and put them in the MLS.
I thought the entire issue overseas is that they all have academies. They all get young players in, and they're all building their teams from within.
That they are at the very top of the league, or they're doing it the middle of the league and the bottom of the league. But if you do it at the middle of the league and the bottom of the league, you're developing that player to sell to somebody else and make enough money that you can buy 6 more players and actually field a competitive team.
Why is that not a bad plan? I ran a whole team for 18 years based on that plan. Develop players, and when they get expensive, trade them or let them go, and replace them with players who are better, younger, and cheaper.
Yeah, that's a fine plan, and you executed it very well.
Got criticized every day. Crushed.
Well, of course, because it's not really the American way, right? We're not developing players to send our favorite players off to other teams. When Brighton in the Premier League has great players, they end up with almost no choice but to sell those players to Man City and Man United and Liverpool or Real Madrid or Barcelona, right? And that doesn't really happen in the same way in the U.S., right?
No, I'm saying it does happen in the U.S. That's what low revenue teams do. In a non-salary cap league, although there's financial fair play overseas, but in a non-salary cap league like baseball, that's exactly what happens. And it's not, you're watching it with Oakland. This week we saw the reverse boycott. We saw what's going on with the Oakland A's, who have, are an all-star team of players elsewhere, though many teams do. But that is not uncommon, where teams have to churn. If you're not the Yankees or the Dodgers, you're churning players. And it seems like MLS bringing in Messi, their point was to buy them legitimacy. And I tried that, to buy legitimacy by signing a bunch of free agents, and it just failed terribly. And I'm just wondering at the end, when we look back on this, do the LA Galaxy, MLS, I can say it a different way. The Beckham deal 16 years ago, did it accomplish what they thought it would accomplish by bringing Beckham to MLS?
Well, it's a good question. It may have, partly just because Beckham is still around, right? He's now an owner. That's good for the league. I suspect his being in Inter Miami was a factor, not the defining factor for Messi going there. So I think it advanced the cause. I just believe they should be at the same time looking not to buy Ibrahimovic at the end of his career, Beckham at the end of his career. It feels, it may be a smart stunt, but it feels like a stunt.
There are leagues that are founded as a stunt. I thought when Dwayne Johnson took over the XFL that it was a stunt. I didn't believe it. I did a whole segment on Nothing Personal before you started listening to it about Rock and his investment in the XFL and how he had a chance to turn it around. It's failed so often. I actually do not believe in the XFL in any way. And we got news the other day that they are losing money hand over fist. Some reports up to $60 million in losses. And the XFL is claiming that everything is great. You don't have to worry. And your opinion of the XFL, I assume, is not a good one?
I do not believe that professional American tackle football is going to work in the spring. Everybody believes it is so successful. Let's do it year round. Can you name one player on any of the XFL or USFL teams?
I cannot, but I may be in the minority. But is it Chad Ochocinco? He may be on one of the teams, or I could be aging myself. I've only heard of The Rock.
So Chad Ochocinco, instead of taking Social Security, decided to keep playing football in the spring football league. That should tell you about the likelihood of success, is that Chad Ochocinco might be in the league and you're not even sure. Matt Coca may be more informed than you are. Matt, can you name a single player in the USFL or the XFL?
My guess is that he absolutely cannot, but he'll scream in my ear, no, he absolutely cannot.
Okay, so he cannot.
So
Lindsey Cohen is sitting here. Lindsey, can you name a single player? Okay, not a good sign.
The only thing Coca knows is that Ochocinco is not in the XFL. He can confirm that, but not anybody. He can't confirm anybody's name. But it's a business, and The Rock, whether he invested his own money or not, he got investors to buy it, and they have a season, and he's trying to become more successful than McMahon at this. And they're claiming there's going to be a second season, yet they're firing a bunch of their employees, and they're saying that they're going to make it a seasonal business. I understand
It'll be like people picking fruit. They'll only work when the tree is ripe. They'll bring them in. They seem to me a good candidate to transition to the PGA status as a nonprofit.
They don't need to transition to nonprofit. They're already there. They are not profitable, but they're, according to one of the co-owners, said we're extremely well capitalized for the long term. This is not just an endeavor that's going to fill up a portfolio and one day we flip it and we're out. Side note, parenthetical, of course not, because they'd flip it for a loss. This is legacy. This is the long game. Everybody who's ever gone bankrupt has always said we're in it for the long term, and then they stop, including the last iteration of the XFL. I don't know how it survives unless a broadcaster will bail them out, and nobody has stepped up so far to bail them out. Would the NFL have an interest in bailing them out?
I don't understand why they would, no.
Because they're not, this is the first time, they're not against it. They're trying to cooperate. They're trying to make it work.
Well, I'm happy they're trying to cooperate. I don't think they're contributing money to it. They don't need it. There's always this rhetoric that, this will be the minor leagues. They have minor leagues. It's called Alabama and Georgia and USC and Oregon. They have a great minor league system, and it costs them $0. So I do not know why they would need a spring football league. The spring, the concept is flawed, and it's irresistible because people love football so much, but it's a flawed concept.
So the broadcasters, the networks could put an end to it if they stopped, if they gave no platform. Sponsors could put an end to it, but they need hours. Aren't you always looking for spring and summer hours?
No, there's a lot of good hours in spring. My recollection is that's when the NBA plays their playoffs. That's when hockey plays its playoffs. Baseball starts. There's women's softball. There's the men's basketball tournament. There's the Masters and the U.S. Open. There's the French Open, the Wimbledon. The spring is not particularly bereft of sports content better than spring football.
What would be the reason that you would not or would invest? Are you saying the only reason you would not is that you don't believe in the concept of spring football, or you believe the NFL is such a stronghold on the football fan that there's no room for them to like another league?
I think it is a flawed concept because everybody who can play in the NFL plays in the NFL. So by definition, you have a bunch of players who can't play in the NFL because they're not good enough. And there are a bunch of players which we just proved that nobody knows their names. And so consequently, they're not going to watch them play. It's the same reason I believe that 3-on-3 basketball is a flawed concept. It just, watered down versions of great sports leagues are not particularly attractive. Nobody's looking for a second tennis circuit, far as I know.
Then why did ESPN give him $20 million?
I no longer being employed there. I have no insight into
speculate?
why they would no. When anybody ever came around when I was there talking about a spring football league, I politely passed.
And since they moved on, they have politely said, we'll dip our toe in. Is it not unheard of to think that Roger Goodell called up Jimmy and said, hey, you're going to have to throw 20 toward the XFL?
That seems unlikely to me.
So as part of the new deal with the NFL, the new broadcasting deal, it's out of nowhere that the NFL is cooperating with the XFL and that the XFL got this $20 million deal from ESPN when ESPN has gotten a few things from the NFL, including its own game, its own ESPN Plus game, an exclusive window, some flexing, totally unrelated in your mind.
I think they are mostly unrelated. I don't think the NFL has enough interest to call in a favor, whether or not somebody thought, gee, this will make I don't even think anybody speculated this will make the NFL happy. If you ask the NFL if they'd take $20 million less if you help fund the spring football league, do you think they'd say yes?
Well, they did. In theory, because ESPN allocated $20 million to it. And they wouldn't have done it without the NFL knowing. Would you feel so. This is a great question? Would you feel so you would not talk to the NFL? You're their partner, and you would not talk to your partner about an investment you would make with a potential competitor?
Yes. If I knew that the NFL was opposed to the league, I would probably decide that since it's not likely to work, it's not worth my taking a flyer on that. Though I never called them when I was approached about spring football and said, what do you think? Should I do this or not? And they never called me. And my guess would be, though I don't know, that they did not call anybody at ESPN or Fox, or I think these guys are all hoping that lightning strikes. By the way, everybody takes a call. If Dwayne Johnson, I'd take a call. If he called me, I'd talk to him. So they take the call, they get excited. They think that maybe it's going to work this time because a bunch of celebrities are involved and they decide to spend $20 million. I don't understand why, to tell you the truth, I don't understand why they spent $20 million on it.
I'd be afraid to tell Dwayne Johnson the truth about what I thought about the XFL.
Well, we already have, but we're assuming that he's not going to show up at our doors.
Well, I'm assuming a whole lot of people aren't going to show up at my door after this show. So that's a working assumption in general. But it's, The Rock comes in with a suit and tie, and I'm tempted to say, hell yeah, the XFL is great. Let me just make sure Roger's good. So that's why I would be calling Roger Goodell.
Generally, everything that Dwayne Johnson has done other than this has worked. If he came in and asked me if I'd give him $20 million for a movie, the answer would be hell yes. I'll definitely take that. If he came in and said, do you want to put on spring football games, I would say politely, Mr. Johnson, I'm going to decline.
What if I told you that you had a better chance of getting your money back from XFL than you would from a movie in general, as a general matter?
Well, I'm not talking about a movie. I'm talking about a Dwayne Johnson movie.
Even a Dwayne Johnson
Last time I checked,
movie.
they all make at least $20 million the first day. So
yeah, but that's gross, and you know the difference. So these movie channels.
well,
Before we
no,
go,
no,
we could talk about the accounting that's used by studios. I would love to do a show about how studios do accounting and how they deal with when people have a point or profit sharing, on how you can easily, as I've done in business, make a company not profitable with sleight of hand that is not illegal, but very easy to do. So I think it's pretty easy if Dwayne Johnson has a piece of a movie to show that it's not profitable. I just think there's a reason. I'm gonna go on record, John, and tell you that the ESPN definitely spoke to the NFL before giving XFL $20 million. And the next time, if we can ever confirm that in any of your cocktail parties or any of the famous people you hang out with, if you could confirm that one day for me, that would be great. Will you try to remember that?
not really.
Come on.
If I was going to run into somebody, it's not really the question I'd ask them, and
I really like
care.
being your partner, John. Thank you so much for your time. This has really been a slice of heaven. We'll do this again. There's so many more business topics to discuss. We did not get to all of the ones that we wanted to get to. We will do this again at some point when we can get you again for an hour. So thank you so much, John.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Matt.